Okay. Namaste. 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 Hello for joining us online. Let's take a few minutes to throttle down, come into the heart. Get to know that side of us that often gets lost in the shuffle. So bring your attention to the breath, to the heart. And what that means, you imagine a point of light in the very core of the chest, not your physical heart, not the chakra, deeper. Very core of the chest, imagine a point of light. It's just there. And it radiates its light effortlessly in all directions. And the mind might still be going this way and that way, so just give it a little while to settle into that point of light. You can imagine that your breath is flowing in and out of that point of light, kind of like blowing on an ember in a fireplace. Each time the breath moves through this point, it glows a little stronger, it gets a little bigger. So this is the part of what you can do. You can imagine this point of light. The other part is just to relax into it. This is like undoing, relaxing into that space of the heart. And it may come to you as some kind of a sensation, a feeling, a lightness, a warmth, an empty, feeling empty of trouble. See how it comes to you. And if it's just the image that you can hold in your mind, that's perfectly fine too. And you may notice the distractedness of the mind. Just notice and come back into that point of light, into the heart. And just keep doing that until you settle in a little bit more. This is the direct movement to the very core of your being. And that point of light can expand in your chest and become like a small sun, radiating effortlessly its light and warmth into the totality of your being. And you can receive this warmth and this light from your innermost heart, from that sun in the chest. Receive it and enjoy it deeply. Just soak it up. You may notice that you are right now both the lover, the source and origin of love, and the receiver of love, the beloved. You're the lover and the beloved in one. This means that opening to love is absolutely safe. So give yourself to that. See if you can get a sense of the sensation in the heart, or just stay with the image, and the sensation of receiving love in every cell of your body, in your mind, your emotions, becoming radiant with that love that is completely in you. And see how you are right now, completely independent of any external source of love. You have come to the well, and the well is in you. The well is you. For a moment you can let go, abandon all your searching for love, recognition, acknowledgement, attention, and give all of that to you in its pure essence from your heart. And you have the capacity to go deeper and deeper and deeper into the well of this heart. And to nurture yourself from there profoundly. Free yourself of all the obstacles to that love, to that essential way of being that pop up in our lives. To fulfill this deepest yearning. Yearning for love, for peace, for freedom, right from that inner source. Know that this source is always there for you. You can return to it again and again, going deeper and deeper over time, until you are fully at home in this space of the heart. Until this happiness you seek really has become your nature. So take a deep breath. Let's do our 3 ohms. Another deep breath. Okay. So, I have to call you back. So if we speak about this deep hunger in us for something that makes us run around and search for it here and there and everywhere where we cannot really find it. This deep hunger has basically 2 aspects: love and wisdom. And both are forces that allow us to transcend our human situation and open into our true being, which is beyond really our ability to describe, because it transcends the rational mind, it transcends concepts, but it's certainly always there for us to experience. So last week I was able to spend a few days with my friend Ramdas in Maui. It was very quiet time. It was just mostly the 2 of us. There's 2 wonderful caregivers, Dasima and Josh, were there, but we were just hanging out. There was nothing to do. I didn't go there with an agenda, except maybe one, which is to expand the heart. And I just realized, again, this is why people seek out saints. For 2 reasons. One is to help them or get help through wisdom to unhook the mind from where it is caught in the forces that create suffering, like desire and fear and ignorance, confusion. So wisdom can help us unhook that. But that's not what I went to Ramdas for. I went to Ramdas for the other part, which is just this expansion of the heart. And it was wonderful. We just hung out. We've known each other for a long time. We just hung out like old brothers. And in that hanging out, something happens that you can't really put words to. You can't really describe it. It's some kind of widening that comes through relaxing, through letting go. And that's why people seek him out. To go there and to be transformed simply by being in the presence of someone who has done some of that transformation himself. And so we do that here too. You actually learn how to do it with yourself. This is what heart sourcing is. It's the way you go into the heart in whatever way you can, small or large, doesn't matter, and it changes from time to time. One day you are really still inside, you can go really deep into the heart. The next day, well, you're more scattered and it may not work so much, but the effort is what counts. And every time you make an effort, it's cumulative. And so your ability to go into that inner source and to find the peace and that fullness of love there gets honed every time you do it. It's improved, gets strengthened. And it's something that is, you can feel it, but it's intangible in terms of the mind. So we can't really write a book about it itself, this sensation of letting go, of opening, of widening, of coming home to yourself. And so in our world here, the Western world where we're so mind-dominated, it is often not quite understood. This way we can just let go into the source that is already in us. So sometimes we need help from the mind, and the pursuit of wisdom can help us in that. So we'll do some of each here. But I just was struck by this grace and the profound sweetness of hanging out with my brother. And I also was struck of how easily this can be overlooked, because it's subtle. But because it's subtle, it's powerful. The most subtle things are the most powerful ones. So this is the invitation to go into your heart again and again, whether it's here in satsang, which helps to do it in a group of people, but to do it at any time, like you just did, like you can do in a moment when you're sitting somewhere waiting for an appointment. What usually happens? What runs through your head? Is it so important? Or you can just come into the heart. So, you know, what's happening right now, we all are impacted in some way by that. It's like Ebola, we've got the Islamic State mess, what else is going on? Ukraine just happened, it's a little calmed down now. I mean, one disaster after another. And the media are pitching it up. So I'm just want to use that sort of thing, and it may be something much more private for you. It may be that your dog is sick, or that somebody you love is not here, or some desire you have is unfulfilled, some old pain from the past perhaps that seems to pursue you. So we have our minds focused on this stuff. And I'm not saying not to pay attention to it. Of course, we have to pay attention to it to some extent. But how much of your mental space do you rent out to this? Is it the right amount or is it too much? I'm not going to ask you if it's too little, because it's never too little. I remember I lived in India for 2 years and had no idea of what's happening in the real world, like in politics and so on. I had no idea. I was just completely isolated. And guess what? I didn't miss a thing. As a matter of fact, I came back so profoundly enriched. So ask yourself, all that stuff of the world, do you rent out too much space for it, or just the right amount? If it's the right amount, if it feels right, great. If it's a little too much, that means you're aggravated, or you're fearful, or you're worried, or you carry an old burden with you, then I invite you to reduce that. Take back that space. It takes sort of recognizing that and making a decision. And then finding the ways to reduce this habitual distractedness that we have, and the ways our mind gets attached to what actually causes us suffering. Paying attention and taking care of things, fine. But then there's the attachment. Attachment to worry. Attachment to grief. Attachment to some source of pain or other, subtle or gross. And we do that. But we do that. We might as well be masters of our true life. That is open to us. So we have this attachment to what's going on in our world. Just notice that. Go to an example of it. And feel that attachment is a desire, a fear, a confusion. You have an example? Right? Yeah, good. So then look at that, and if it's too much, if it's disturbing you, make a mental intention, set an intention to reduce that. And there's different skills that we use connected with heart sourcing that are at your disposal for that. But today I want to just go and make a leap out of it. So we have this sense of attachment, this sense of being focused out there, where there's ultimately no solution to the problem. You've seen this all your life. It's like one problem is replaced by another. One worry is replaced by another, and the habit of worrying is still there. So I want to go to something Nirasagadatta wrote that has lately just caught my attention. And you see, every teacher has its own vocabulary. And that's one of the reasons why it's often recommended to stay with one teacher and not go from teacher to teaching to teaching, because it gets confusing, because sometimes the same words are used for different things. And when we're beginning on this, in this process of understanding, and we go from one system of thought to another, it can get really confusing. So that's why I want to explain a little bit of how he uses certain terms, and please understand you may have used them in different contexts with slightly different meaning. So he writes, or he says, as long as one is conscious, there will be pain and pleasure. Now that we can understand. So you see the mind like a pendulum going from pain to pleasure, pain to pleasure. And always when we're at pain, we're pushing over to pleasure. And when we get to pleasure, it's just a matter of time until the pendulum swings back. So there's no solution on that level. Then he says, you cannot fight pain and pleasure on the level of consciousness. To go beyond them, you must go beyond consciousness. Now this may get you. How the hell am I going to go beyond consciousness? What is there beyond consciousness? So when we look at consciousness, what is consciousness in this context? It's our, the attachment you have to a particular issue in your life, to worrying about something, let's say. So that's your consciousness. There is no solution to that on the level of consciousness. It can be improved, but there's no solution to it. To go beyond them, pain and pleasure, you must go beyond consciousness, which is possible only when you look at consciousness as something that happens to you and not in you. I know this is stretching the mind. So before we were stretching the heart, now we're stretching the mind. And don't worry, it's not important for you to really have a really good grade in understanding all of this now. It's more about letting it in and letting it expand your sense of reality.
Can you repeat that?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
To go beyond pain and pleasure and consciousness itself, in which pain and pleasure always happen, like that pendulum swing. You must go beyond consciousness, which is possible only when you look at consciousness as something that happens to you and not in you, as something external, alien, and superimposed. Now that is pretty damn wild. Because what do you know of yourself other than you're conscious?
Mm-hmm. So
right?
We don't even own consciousness. We're not consciousness.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
We're not even in charge of consciousness or responsible for our consciousness.
Yeah, but we're saying we're conscious, and that's about all we know about ourselves, what we're conscious of. And now he says you have to go beyond that and see it as something that's external. And what does he say?
I thought that was
consciousness. See consciousness as something external, alien, superimposed. Just hang in there. We're not done with this paragraph. It's just one paragraph. The guy is pretty condensed in the way he talks. Then suddenly you are free of consciousness, really alone, with nothing to intrude. And that is your true state. Now I would completely understand if you have a real hard time relating to this. But it points to moments you have experienced. where the usual you as which you experience yourself is just not there. That's why the usual you has such a hard time relating to this. This is a space of profound freedom. Consciousness is an itching rash that makes you scratch. Of course, you cannot step out of consciousness, for the very idea of stepping out of it is in consciousness. But when you learn to look at your consciousness as a sort of fever, personal and private, in which you are enclosed like a chick in its shell, out of this very attitude will come the crises which will break the shell. So, to make it simple, what he's saying is there's a state beyond consciousness which is our true home. Nature. So what is that? In response to this, something came to me, and I wrote, there's always an unease about consciousness. So that's where he starts also. Something, whatever you defined a few minutes ago. Yeah, the burden you carry. You and this object that may worry you.
But what is the difference between consciousness and being aware of that which worries you?
There isn't one. That is consciousness.
So the need is to go beyond it. What does it mean to go beyond it?
Well, do you want to be free?
Yes.
Yeah. That is the need to go beyond it. Do you want to resolve this pendulum swing between pain and pleasure back and forth?
And what is beyond consciousness?
That's what we're pointing to. So that's the question, right? So we're pointing to it. It cannot be, you cannot grab it and enclose it in a concept of thought. It's just too big for that. Concepts of thoughts are made to describe objects in this world, which is, they operate within consciousness. Concepts operate within consciousness. So we have to understand that there's a place to go beyond that. That is freedom.
It's like the second witness. You have the first witness of consciousness watching the unconsciousness, and then the is, or the M watching
Okay, yeah.
the consciousness.
You're close, but I don't want to get too many different terms confused into this yet in the terms of this discussion, right?
Okay.
So words, you're sitting here, you're sitting wherever you're sitting. And you can watch yourself sitting where you're sitting, right? This is what Leslie's pointing to. So this is the witnessing. Like I can witness myself here, sitting here, right? But then that being sitting here and the witnessing of it also arises in something, does it not? So there's a larger container in which the witnessing or the consciousness arises. And this in his language, Nisargadatta language, he calls it awareness. So awareness is not personal, it's vast, it's unlimited. It's sometimes known as the formless, within which all form appears. And all of these, again, are concepts, so they're not the real thing, right? This is maybe a little heady, but it's stretching. It's a stretching. We're stretching the mind, we're stretching the heart. And then after this stretching, we can step into it, into this place where we feel more at home. Please.
So when I am aware that I have a pattern that is going on for some time, do I call that awareness? Do I call that consciousness?
It's consciousness.
So I'm conscious about this pattern that I've been working with.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it teaching here? What is the need to go beyond it?
Because in the state beyond that we're pointing to, the pleasure-pain cycle of consciousness does not exist. So there's freedom from that. It's a non-dual state. It's a state that we're all aspiring to, but we're caught in the pleasure and pain, the wanting and not wanting, the past and the future of our lives.
Even if we're just witnessing it?
Even if we're just witnessing it, because when you're witnessing it, you have some distance, but it's still, you're still there. You know, the witness is conscious of what it's witnessing, right? So it's still there.
So this is where there's no...
Right. That is where you're completely disengaged from the suffering of that, right? And that is, now we're talking on the level of seeking wisdom, right? We're talking through understanding. And understanding, when we're pursuing this in the correct way, has to be a bit over your head. If it's not over your head, this doesn't work. If you just go in, learning stuff that the mind can easily understand because it's already conditioned to do that, that's not going to help you transcend. That's not going to set you free. That is not going to stretch you in this attempt of gaining wisdom. It's like when we listen to these kind of words, it's like, wow, let me just become still. So somewhere a comprehension of this can arise, an experience of that can arise.
So you're not even a witness in that state. You're just...
I have no idea. I'm just talking. Or
yeah, it seems
talking.
that would be, if you're not affected by anything going on, then you're not witnessing. You're just...
Well, okay, let's continue here. Consciousness arises in the field of love and wisdom. This is something I wrote. So it arises in the field of love and wisdom. Love and wisdom are the emanations and paths of that field. So love and wisdom are emanating from that field, and they're also the paths to it. As we pursue love and wisdom, we get to that field. The Buddhists call it a Buddha field. You call it the world of the sages, the realm of the sages, which is our true home. We're all these sages. We're all, a Buddha is already inside of us. And that's what we're seeking, because that Buddha nature, that quality of sagehood is already in us. And we've been confused and have been looking out there to find it, hunting for pleasure. And if you want little pleasures, great, go for that. But these little pleasures always come to an end and swing back to pain. So we're looking here for not a pleasure, but a bliss or a joy and an understanding and a way of being that is free and anchors us in this freedom and this happiness in a permanent way. This field of love and wisdom is the real world. The world of love in which your true self already lives. The true self already lives there. It's like we got lost. This part of our true being that we experience now here got lost out of this true world and is living in this shadow world of desire and fear. The gateway to that field is the cave of the heart. To help you understand this, the cave of the heart is that innermost place in the heart that we use in heart sourcing meditation. That place where that fulfillment we seek is already fully present. And the cave of the heart is a term that comes out of Sanskrit that's been used for thousands of years. Sometimes they call it Hridayam. Hrida means that I am, I am. That I am. That I am. That innermost place in us. So what in heart sourcing, what we focus on is the very essence of what we are. Not some emotional state called love. Something much deeper, out of which all the happiness, really unshakable happiness, the peace that passes all understanding, our true being can be found here. It's the gateway to that. The gateway to that field is the cave of the heart. The gateway is open. There are no doors or obstructions. There are no doors or obstructions in the heart. It is always open for you. But of course, that's not our experience. We experience obstructions. All obstructions are created every moment anew by our believing our thoughts. So I have a thought that says, I need this. What happens to the gateway of the heart? It remains open, but now you're busy. You're running after this, or you're running away from that. Remember? Pain and pleasure. We're running away from this, we're running toward that. And we're busy. And we're distracted. And we worry, and we create habits of unhappiness, which can become mingled with the sense of who we are, this mistaken sense of who we are called ego. And the pain body then attaches itself to that which hurts. And if we don't have enough of that, we say, oh, something's wrong. It's like too good to be true. And we run back to that, or we sabotage ourselves.
Can you explain what the pain body, because it might be a new term for many.
The pain body is that which I just said, the habits of our identity. So we have an identity that's basically a thought form. I'm the person who has these parents and this education and that body and this life and these relatives and that education and so on. It's like a whole package of things. And within that, on a subconscious level, emotional level, is I am the person who has a certain amount and a certain type of pain. That feels familiar. And the ego clings to that. It is afraid to let go of that because, oh my God, this is not safe. Who am I now? We would have to step into the unknown, into that empty, open space in which something new can occur. And the ego is always afraid of that. The self, what we already are, what inspires you to be here, is not afraid of that. It's looking for that. It's yearning for that. And there's a struggle between the forces of ego and the forces of the true self in all of us. And we go back and forth. We take 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. We always do that. And that's okay too, because the 2 steps back, we sort of consolidate our gains. Then we can go another 3 steps forward. Now, in this search of going 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, this pursuit of wisdom wisdom in itself, wisdom of that place of our true freedom, which can also be pursued simply by just going into the heart through the pursuit of love. That moves us very fast on this path of our hesitation. Oh yeah, I want to grow, but then you run into some new space, some new openness, and you scurry back to something that feels more familiar. Okay, do you relate to this? Does this happen to you? I can't tell you how many times it happened to me. But when we sort of take this hook and line and we just throw it across the abyss of our own ignorance, and we hear of something that feels true, we have a taste of the truly open heart, maybe just a moment, maybe looking at a sunset, maybe looking at the child's or the eyes of an infant. Something touches us and we say, I want that. And then you have this line over to the other side of the abyss of your ignorance, and the heart can just dance over on that line. Because now you know where there's some place to go. As long as we are, like most people, hoping that someone will love us, hoping that somehow we'll be okay, always with the fear in the back that we won't have enough, it's very hard to make true progress. But when we understand that the fullness of what we seek, the love and the wisdom, is already in us, is already our true core. And what we must do is to simply relax all the other stuff. The distractions, the fears, the desires, the confusions. And relax into that heart. Then we're able to make much bigger steps, even this immediate step into freedom. Because it's there every moment. There is no doors in that gateway of the heart. And I can prove that to you. Because when your heart is halfway quiet, it doesn't have to be completely quiet, but if it's not too aggravated, is it not possible for you to step into that place where you find some sense of deeper stillness? It doesn't have to be, great and incredible. It isn't that possible to do that. It's always there.
Is it through stillness only that we access the heart, or is it through an absolutely joyful moment?
Absolutely joyful moments are wonderful. And there's something profoundly still in the core of that. If it's true joy. True joy takes its being and its juice from that inner place. The outer situation evokes it. But does the outer situation really infuse you with that great joy? No, it comes from inside, just like love does.
Yeah, maybe that outer situation was the spark.
Yeah, it's the spark. It's that which actually allows us to relax enough to feel what's inside of us. And there are certain things we can seek out. It's like the eyes of an infant, the sunrise, the sunset, something of great beauty. It just stops the mind for a moment.
Service to others, that would be.
Service to others, absolutely. The joy that comes from giving without attachment. Why does that joy come? Because at that moment, you taste what you are. which is that love through the act of service. And it's that giving that makes you into the giving person, which is, again, what you are. It gets you close to yourself. I remember Baron Katie put us up to this exercise of doing something for somebody else, 3 things in a day, doing 3 things for somebody else without that person finding out. That part is important because otherwise the ego wants to really shine, right? No, you have to not be found out. And if you're found out by one of those 3 people, it all doesn't count. You have to start from 1 again. Okay, so you really need to be careful. And I couldn't think of what to do. I only had 30 years in yoga and devotional practice and all of that meditation. You know, I couldn't think of anything to do to somebody else. It was like hopeless, right? And then I just sat with that, and it took a while to actually like, what can I do for people, right? Now I find something all the time, and it's become second nature, and it's like a constant joy. And it doesn't have to be a big thing, you know, just anything counts. Just to open to the joy of yourself as a giving person. It's so delicious.
We have a question going back to the consciousness topic.
Okay.
Rosemary asked, is the inside synonymous with consciousness? And how do you discern when the ego gets in the way?
Okay, now, Rosemary, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by insight, but it seems... No, I'm not sure what you mean by insight.
Maybe insight is the heart,
Well, there is this experience where you go, If that's what you mean by insight, I would say this is probably something where that consciousness releases its hold on you. When insight is an intellectual understanding, then it's part of consciousness.
The word is inside, not inside.
Oh, okay.
Inside.
Inside. So
Inside.
say that. Okay, I misunderstood your question.
Yes, maybe it's my pronunciation.
No, it's my bad hearing. It all works together.
Is the inside
Okay.
synonymous with consciousness? And how do you discern when the ego gets in the way?
Yeah. The inside, no, consciousness, let me start there. Consciousness is about stuff. It could be your body, it could be anything in your world, it could be your thoughts, it could be your mind itself, but it's stuff.
She meant by inside meaning what is already inside of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's slow. So we're talking about consciousness right now, right? So consciousness is always about stuff. So it's always external. Even a thought about the mind is external. Does it make sense? Mm-hmm. It's like external. You're not this body. The body is external to what you are. Inside is that gateway of the heart. If I look at purely what I understand to be inside. Now, this was so fun to be with Ramdas because it's hard for me to find somebody to talk to about this space inside the heart. And we understood each other perfectly, it seemed, even though, again, it's like really hard to find words for this stuff. But there is this way of going into the heart, you know, like we're in training, like we're going inside the heart, we're going to the heart, we're trying to be in love, in that space of love, right? We're going there. And I can say love, I can say peace, I can say pure being.
For that consciousness?
No. So we have to be careful here. Tread lightly, right?
Yeah.
That the inside, maybe let me say the inside of the inside, the true inside, is that place where consciousness lets go of the world that we know, the entire universe of this creation we're aware of, into a formless space from which it comes back not knowing anything about it because it's formless. Or it can go through this gateway of the heart into the place that's called the Buddha field, or the world of the sages, the realm of the sages, where there is form, but it is a non-dual state of being. There are beings who are still maintaining a sense of separateness, but not an illusion of being separate. You see, we live in a world where we get through these physical bodies instantly when we're born, the illusion of being separate beings, right? You're over there, I'm over here. But the truth is that what's over there is the Leslie puppet, and this is the Ramgiri puppet, right? So we are one consciousness, one heart essence, inseparable, who's playing these roles of different people and different entities moving through space and time. And we get lost in that. We think, oh no, I'm separate. I'm here, you're over there. You better do what I want you to do. And so on,
Only.
But when we go deeper, the reality is that consciousness is looking out of your eyes at this puppet, and consciousness looking out of these eyes at that puppet. And consciousness is inseparable. It is one and the same. So what we're trying to do is to untie ourselves of the habits of seeing ourselves as separate and as concerned about, pleasure and pain. Always that comes with it, desire and fear. Those are the forces that run the personality. And the personality is the vehicle in which, the puppet, the Ramgiri puppet, right, the vehicle in which this consciousness now exists. And this consciousness, now I'm mixing up terms, I just realized that. See, we have troubles with terms. In which this awareness that is the same in you and in me exists. And it has its personal consciousness of its world. Right? That's more clear now? Right. So I just slipped up there because he has his language. I'm trying to adhere to Nirsagadatta's language. So awareness is the place of absolute oneness, of no pain, of complete love for everything. And that's our true home.
So there's awareness, and there's consciousness, which is the witness. And then there's the other level of unconsciousness. So it's really like 3 levels.
And so she says part of her,
This is Rosemary.
the second part of her question was, how can we discern when the ego gets in the way, which I believe gets in the way of consciousness?
Well, the ego
Consciousness is already ego.
the ego is consciousness, or consciousness is the ego. It's the instrument of the ego to know itself. But the ego is not one monolithic evil thing. The ego is simply something that we have as the package of being here. Now that ego has different states, there's different ways of looking at it. I talk about the ego of suffering, the ego of aspiration, and the ego of the sage, which is only a semblance of an ego. But in this context, let's talk about the three gunas. There is a quality of heaviness and unconsciousness that's called tamas. There's a quality of activity, busy, 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 called rajas. And there is a quality of consciousness, of lightness, of openness, that's called sattva. So when the ego is ruled by tamasic and rajasic forces, in other words, our ego structure is heavy, self-involved, and active, always seeking, seeking, seeking. Pleasure, pain, pleasure, pain. As long as these forces rule the ego, it is tied into that consciousness and lost in consciousness. Consciousness is its prison, because it's in its world as in a prison. And it wants to rule the world and all that. It's afraid of the world, all ego movements. So what sadhana is all about, spiritual practice, is to help the ego become increasingly light, increasingly open, increasingly conscious. And the more conscious and light and sattvic the ego is, the less of a prison it is. We always have still an ego. Even though I can see myself here as the Ramgiri dolly talking to the Leslie dolly over there, that insight doesn't come if the ego is very dense, right? My consciousness can understand that there's an awareness in which you and I are not at all separate and have never been. So that's sattvic ego that can have the wisdom to understand that. And the love to look at your eyes and only see itself, which is really love. So there's still ego here, but it's very light. It's that ego of aspiration. And in what we call a sage, that delusion of happiness, of heaviness, of separation never really becomes so strong that it captures your consciousness at all. So the sage is aware of awareness all the time. That awareness is activated and is always there. And there are many people who go in and out of that, who have it sometimes and then lose it a little bit and get it back in that state, and some who are like very solidly in it. So those people we call sages, and we're all sages in training. So when you lose it, don't feel bad. That's simply another moment of practice. We have to lose it in order to see what still gets us lost. Like the old worry comes, or the issue that we defined earlier in your particular life that gets you. When that comes, open your arms to it, but deal with it with wisdom and love so it can dissolve. You see, if you defend against it and say, "Oh no, I don't want that," and why the hell am I doing that still? And what's with the drama and the pain?
Something that I just learned recently. This Buddhist teacher, Pema Chodron, talks about that everything has the cycle of coming together and falling apart. So we think we need to overcome or transcend things, but in reality, the cycle repeats itself. things coming together and falling
Well,
apart.
but you see, that's the cycle within what he calls consciousness, within the world of changes. Yes, everything comes together and falls apart all the time, right? But awareness does not. That within which consciousness arises does not. True peace, that's peace that is absolutely undisturbed, comes when you realize you are that in which consciousness arises. Another way of saying it is this image of the ocean and the waves. You know, we start life and we're part of the waves, and there's ups and downs and highs and lows all the time. Things come together, fall apart all the time. That's that realm, and that realm is there. But where are we? Are we, a little rubber ball that goes up and down in the waves? That's where we've been. We all know what that feels like. Or do we find stillness and go deep and understand that we are, all these waves are, what are they? They're water. They're water. What are they? They are ocean. And when your consciousness is tied into the surface level of reality like that, it's very tumultuous. So what we want is to allow consciousness to sink down from the realm of the waves into the depth of the ocean, where there's no movement, absolute stillness, peace, profound, all-encompassing love that is unchanging.
But the coming together and falling apart continues to happen.
Yeah.
What I understand from those words is that you will not be affected by things coming together and falling apart.
Exactly.
You remain undisturbed by the cycle, the natural, because it's natural. That cycle is natural.
Yeah.
A plant grows and it dies.
I mean, look at
Right.
Ramdas. He had a stroke, and he spent, I don't know how many years now, in a wheelchair. Very difficult life. Does he suffer about it? Of course. He needs to be lifted out of the chair. He needs to be lifted into bed. All of that. He cannot do a lot of these things. But he doesn't suffer over it. He suffers if he is the ball that goes up and down in the waves. Then there's constant suffering in a state like this, enormous suffering. But he's not identified. His consciousness is not there. His consciousness is in that place of peace, and he understands the blessing in that. He said to me, before he had this stroke, his consciousness was into all kinds of different things. He was the brilliant lecturer. And then with the stroke, his ability to form words went. And so he was able to go deep into the heart. And now people from all over the world come for that. They used to come to him for the power of his speech and his insight. And he knows that that is so much more valuable. It's so much more wonderful for him to share. So he doesn't make himself suffer over that which would be considered suffering.
So, for instance, like in meditation, if you want to go to that place of awareness beyond consciousness, would it be best not to even do a mantra and just be?
Well, you see, theory isn't going to get you there. The question is, what do you need at this moment? If the mind is fluctuating and you can stabilize it with a mantra, then that would be the thing to do. If your heart is closed or unsure of itself, and you have a mantra that opens the heart because you have a devotional relationship to that which the mantra symbolizes, right? Then the mantra would be a godsend. But when you get to the point where your being is ready to go into that deeper stillness, the mantra is going to be in the way.
Right.
So you let it go. So it's just, what we're practicing here are different skills, different approaches to a life that can move you into changing quickly in the direction of your true being. And without the neurosis of, I have to get there now,
Really?
Yeah. But with a great sense of appreciation and love for ourselves and gratitude. I mean, just imagine what it takes for us to sit together here and speak on this level of understanding and of pure intention. It's wonderful. Where so many people sit in front of the boob tube right now and just get stupid, basically, I'm sorry to say. There's nothing wrong with watching TV, but if that's all you do and you don't have the grace to be led to being curious about yourself and how you tick and what really directly can bring you to the type of happiness you're seeking and can free you of suffering in an increasingly and eventually completely permanent way, then we understand the grace that we have been given. And we can have a profound gratitude and also know the responsibility that comes with that, the ability to respond to people who need something, who are ready to receive in some way. But then before we get so concerned about that is the question, am I ready to receive? Am I hungry? Am I hungry for myself? For what I truly am, this miracle, this absolute miracle. Parent Katie says, if you really had an inkling about what you really are, you would just dissolve in absolute bliss and light. So let's celebrate that curiosity, that inner drive, that yearning for love in whatever form it comes to you. Celebrate that. Know that the gateway of the heart is never closed. The question is, are we getting there? And we cannot get there to the extent that we're attached to the world. And the world includes that vehicle that we think we are. The Ramgiri puppet. Is that clear when I say Ramgiri puppet or use your own name, puppet?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's the vehicle in which your soul exists right now, this body-mind complex, the personality. And we think that we are the personality of tremendous attachment to it. But we live in it for a little while. Now, you can improve the personality, and the primary effort that people make at improving their lives goes into improving the personality. And there's nothing wrong with it, except it is not lasting. It's great to have a great personality and a secure personality and a happy personality, and then 2 days later a bus hits it and it's all over. So if your search hasn't gone much deeper, hasn't gone to the level of the soul, then all this effort isn't really going to stay with you. But if your effort goes to the level of the soul, if it goes to that awareness that is beyond the itch of consciousness of things, of stuff, then you're bringing into your life a value that is truly timeless, and an experience and a realization that that is you, that timelessness, that great bliss, that unshakable sense of being. I was going to say security, but it's even too small. Unshakable sense of being. So, enough of talk, right? We have to watch out not to get too top heavy. Let's take a moment and come back to the heart and just let go of even trying to understand it. Because who is it that's trying to understand? That which you are already understands. That which you are is already filled with love. And so bring your loving awareness to the heart. And here, know that you are this loving awareness. And let yourself gently sink into that absolute abundance, absolute generosity of your being. By breathing in and out of the heart, by using your mantra if you're so inspired, by seeing your true beloved's face in your heart. That may be the face of your external beloved, your guru, your Messiah, your deity, or the face that you see when you look in the mirror. And out of all these eyes, it's the same loving awareness that looks at you, that shines in you like the radiant sun. The radiant sun of the heart. And let's pray for a moment that this great yearning for our highest possibility, let's call it enlightenment, becomes stronger and stronger, deeper and deeper, more and more fulfilled. that we know it to be the most precious thing. Because it guides us unfailingly home to ourselves, home to the heart. So let's close this circle for tonight. Thank you for coming. Thank you for tuning in. Namaste.